Hey, hello everyone. Hey, and Daphne, good to see you here in chat. Came to say hi. I hope you're staying actually. I don't know about that. But yeah, it's good to be here. How are you folks doing? Say hi in chat if you're here. Always good to know who's joining live. We're doing an RFC read through today, but it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun. Hey Joris, you're here as well. That's good. I just noticed that I look so orange here. I've been playing around with my camera settings, and I've broken it. But it's fine. I'm gonna play around a little bit with it some more after the stream. But now we're going to look at a new RFC. I'm so excited about it. I also have some thoughts about it. So we'll see where this leads us after an hour. Whether it be a rant with Brent or some just plain excitement about a new feature coming to PHP. It's a clone with RFC, folks. This is really cool. When you think about it, property read-only properties. That's the one I wanted to. I even wrote an article about cloning read-only properties. Read-only classes. PHP 1.8 had read-only properties. That's a while ago. Let's actually open this one as well. Interested. So 1.8. That's already, I don't know. That's an eternity ago that PHP added read-only properties, which is pretty cool because it. Oh, there's an issue here. I just saw. It opened up a whole new way of programming, basically. It opened up the way for just using public read-only properties on classes and basically using data objects instead of, you know, trying to properly encapsulate data. You add read-only on it so that you don't have to use getters and setters, and you know it's read-only, so it can never change. So once the object has been constructed, you're certain that your data is safe and cannot be tampered with from the outside. That's why I like read-only properties, and that's all great until you run into some edge cases. Now I use read-only properties all throughout my code for the past years. I love them. Cannot do without them because I like to structure my code in a way that I split functionality from data, and for data objects, whatever you can think of. It's so nice being able to just rely on PHP's type system and have a structured way of representing data and then passing that data to functions functions or other classes that do something with that data, and kind of like split these two concerns into two. And yeah, that really works well. Unless, of course, you want to make changes to read-only properties. So let me show you like the problem I run into. Let's say we have a class address. And, you know, for brevity's sake, in PHP 8.2, there was the read-only class added where all properties are read-only, right? And then 8.3, I think, added promoted properties. I'm not sure. No, 8.2, it doesn't really matter. Public string, street, and then string number. Is that the right thing? And postal code and city, something like this, right? So I like to use these kinds of objects all throughout my code. And it's really nice. I really like it because you always have, whenever you have an address, is new address, whenever you have an address, right? Can we have some street, Baker Street, number, what was it? 21? Sure, London, right? Whenever you have this kind of object, you know what's in it, and you know that if this object exists, it's valid. Possibly because you've done some validation over here, right? To make sure that these things, this input matches what you actually expect there to be, according to business rules. I don't know. Could be anything. I'm using address here. I'm just like making it up as I go. But the thing is, when you want to make changes to read-only objects, well, you cannot really do that, right? Address, street, Baker Street 2. Yeah, that's... Oh, what's the problem here, actually? Sure. Yeah, this, of course, isn't allowed. PHP will crash. You cannot modify read-only property. And that's the goal of read-only properties, right? That's like the certainty they offer when using them. You don't have to add getters. You don't have to add setters, because once the value has been set, it's good. We're certain that our data won't be tampered with. So what do you do when you do want to make changes to it? Well, you don't want to change the original object, right? Because then it can have unforeseen consequences. But if you make a copy of the object and then create a new object with the same data, but one field changed, well, then you have a new object. The original one is still the same. Nothing unforeseen can happen, but still you've made a new version of that object. There might be various reasons why you want to change stuff within your data, right? And being able to do it in a fast and convenient way, that's just pretty nice. It happens very often, actually. So how do we solve this case before PHP 8.5? Well, you cannot really clone the address. So other address equals clone address, because, okay, you've made a clone, but then you cannot set the other address street anymore, because then, you'll just run into the same problem. Address street has been set during the cloning phase, and that's basically it. So you could add with methods, with street, string, other. Well, let's street, and then you return self, and and then you could do something like this, like return new self. Let's actually add like this, and then the street is the overwritten value, and then over here we have our number. Basically the copy from the original object, right? And this is all nice, but it doesn't really scale, right? Because now you could actually do other address equals address with street, Baker Street, right? And then if we var dump other address, Baker Street 2, actually, like so. So this is really nice. But it's very verbose, right? You need to write a lot of code if you want to be able to support all of these properties. And this is a very small object. you already need 4 methods, which is a lot of overhead. And in reality, we're talking about dozens of objects, if not more. We're talking about maybe tens is probably the max, but dozens of properties on that object, right? So you need a lot of code, and you can of course like manually write all of this, but it gets so annoying very fast. So then what people do, what I do, I'm a lazy developer, right? I just remove the read-only, which isn't really correct, and I know that, but I also know that people aren't very likely to tamper with my data, but it's not a good approach. I like to have that certainty that if I have an object of address, it cannot be tampered with directly. So another option you can do is have some kind of like args generic method, right? And it's been a while since I've written that, but let's see. You could do something like clone equals new. Oh no, we don't have to do this anymore. New reflection class over this, and then new instance without constructor, right? And if you then dump the clone, let's see. Call to undefined method with, of course. Right. So if you dump the clone, then the object was constructed, but there are no properties set, right? And then of course you could do something. It's been a while since I've written this, but so you have your args here. So over here you would say street like this, and then we have args. Let's also return a clone, actually. Yeah, that's right. We have our street here, and what we can do now is we'll say, and this is very dirty, data equals array. There are a couple more things you would need to do, but I'm taking a shorthand here. So we're casting our object to an array, and then we will append. So data equals data in args, and I actually think then we merged. Yeah, see, we merged our data. So that's Baker Street 2, and these are the original values. And then we can do for each data as key value, we can say clone key value basically. And okay, so now we have a reusable method, right? And we can even pass in how many things we want, right? We can do number 22, and it works, and that's pretty cool, right? There are I'm taking a bit of shortcuts here because you do want to do some more validation, and casting to arrays probably, well, it's very, very naive, but you can wrap this up into a trait and use it on whatever kind of data objects with read-only properties, and then get this functionality, and this is pretty nice. The problem I find with this approach is that there's no auto-completion, right? You don't get a list of, well, AI gives me a list, but you don't really get a list of what properties are available here, which I really don't like. So yeah, basically, I did write this package here, and that's what this blog post was about, I think. Cloning read-only properties. Let's see. Yeah. Oh, actually not. I wrote about it before in another blog post, but I don't really remember what that was about. Anyway, the good thing is this is now in PHP. But there are a lot of side notes to make, so that's what we're going to look into. Let's see here, Vitor on YouTube. That way you will have possible objects that are not valid. True. You can ignore the rules defined in the constructor. Yeah, and that's absolutely true. Yeah, and we're gonna get to that because that's one of the side notes I want to make with the PHP implementation as well. So, okay, we're all here now. everyone knows what it is about. Now let's take a look at this RFC. So both read-only properties and the cloning of objects are commonplace in a lot of PHP applications. Yes, definitely. But these two concepts don't fully work together in all cases. So basically the RFC is going to explain the problem I just talked about. And then it's going to introduce a new syntax. And it's kind of, it is kind of the same as what we're used to with clone, right? So clone address. But, and this of course still works as well, but you can now also wrap it in brackets here and then pass in an array of other data. Street, Baker Street 2, and then number 2022, right? Yeah, okay, and of course PHP Storm is complaining here because this isn't, like, this syntax isn't supported yet. But if we run it on PHP master branch, it doesn't work. Aha, yes. Let's remove read-only for a second, because this is the second issue I want to tell you about. So, okay, object, the street has been changed, the number has been changed, the other properties have been copied over. And so this is on PHP's master branch, so PHP 8.5, right? This isn't on my local machine yet, but this is running through eval.org. So this is really great, except that there are a couple of side notes to make. And so let's go through them one by one. The first one is that issue you saw earlier, right? So apparently, oh no, I need to run it again. So yeah, apparently, and this is going to be a bit technical to explain, but a read-only property, and I'm going to remove read-only here, and I'm going to add it over here just for this one property. Oh, this is going to be annoying. Yeah, okay. Cannot modify protected set read-only property address street. What is that about? You know, this is a public property. Why is it protected set? Does anyone know? Can anyone tell me? Well, yes. When asymmetric visibility was added, they looked at read-only properties. And so asymmetric visibility, if you don't know, by the way, you can define the visibility for write and read access separately. So you can make a property public get, so public readable, but only private settable. But public get basically is public private set, and then there's a shorthand private set. But you can make a property only writable from within the private context and then readable from everywhere else. You can also make it protected set, right? And again here, because it's public, you can, like, public is the default basically. So if you have a protected set property, PHP will assume that it's public by default, and then the set access has been changed. Okay, so when this feature was added, they had to do something with read-only properties, right? So this is called asymmetric visibility, and it was added in PHP 8.4. Read-only properties are a bit weird, right? Because read-only properties, they are public read-only properties, that is. They are publicly readable, but they can only be written once, right? So not from, just whenever, like, it's not in its uninitialized state anymore, you cannot change it. So you set its value once, and that's it. And so what they decided in the asymmetric visibility RFC, and this makes sense, is that they had to define some kind of default visibility for public read-only properties and visibility for write access, right? And they decided to do this. So protected, public protected set read-only. Now, this is all just implied by making a read-only public property. So this basically gets automatically added behind the scenes, and you don't have to write it manually every time. And they did this because when read-only properties were added initially, I think in PHP 8.1 we just learned, they were more likely private sets, right? We didn't have a concept of private set like asymmetric visibility. That wasn't a thing yet, but the thing it most resembles was that you can only set a read-only property from within its constructor. That's not entirely true, but private set was kind of like the thing that most accurately represents it. The problem is, yeah, private set, whenever you extend an object with a read-only property, then you cannot set it anymore from within that child object. So they decided, okay, let's make it protected set. So I'm trying to explain this as best as I can, but I know it might be confusing. So for normal properties, when you have a normal public property, that is, this means public read and public write, right? But when it's a read-only property, instead of public set, they make it public and protected set. And so this just, goes on behind the scenes, because you don't write these things. They are just, handled by the by the engine behind the scenes. And it kind of makes sense when you're like using read-only properties, because 99% of the cases you're setting the value within the object itself, right? You can technically, like as I'm doing here, you could, let's just write it out, address equals new reflection. Oh, actually, I'm gonna make a new gist here, scratch file, sorry, class foo with a public read-only property string bar. You can say foo equals new foo. There's no constructor here, right? So this is valid PHP. This runs echo hi, right? This is good. As long as you don't access that property, if you don't try to echo it, even though it's unset, PHP won't complain. But as soon as you try to read it and it doesn't have a value, PHP will say like, type property must not be accessed before initialization, right? So, but it does mean that you can set the value outside of the object itself. So bar equals bar, right? Problem here is that this isn't just public read-only. This is protected set. Protected set. Ooh, read-only. But PHP just hides that from us, right? And then you run into this problem. Cannot modify protected set read-only property. Of course not, because you're trying to set it from outside the scope. This rarely happens. It makes sense that it's protected set. Why would you want to set a value of a read-only property, something that's only set once? Why would you want to do that outside of the object? Like the 99% use case is that this happens in the constructor, right? Where you do some validation on the input and you're done. Your object is created and you cannot change it anymore. So that's great. But now we have clone with, right? And clone with is kind of like the goal of clone with is to be able to do this from the outside. And this is why we run into problems here. Because we're going to go through it one more time here. We created an address. Ooh, let's sort those arguments. We created an address, right? And we say clone with. And we're going to talk about the syntax in a second. Hold your horses. We say clone with, and we say, okay, these are the properties we want to override. These are street, at least, is a read-only property. And it can only be set from, by default, from the protected scope. So not from the outside, which is what clone with is doing. So there are two ways to solve this. If you want to use clone with, you either remove read-only, but that's kind of like the whole reason we need clone with is because of read-only properties, right? Oh, I always forget. I have to run it over here. Like this works. It's not read-only anymore. It's overwritten. Life is good. It's read-only. Doesn't work. So what you could do instead of protected set, well, you can overwrite this. Of course, you can make it public set, right? PHP Storm has some problems highlighting this because like, this is redundant. It's already public. Yeah, well, it's not the case when it's read-only. That's a bug in PHP Storm. I created an issue for that. So let's do it like this. And I'll keep doing that. Is there, hang on, run. Let me see if I can actually key map run. Oh, no. Run on eval. Is it like this? No, I cannot key map that. That's unfortunate. So you make the property public set read only, and then suddenly it works, right? But that means that if we want to use clone with public read-only properties, we'll have to explicitly say public set for every property. And then it will work. Again. And then it will work. And so this is really annoying, folks. Now, clone with the RFC addresses this issue. It's not an issue that's introduced because of the clone with RFC. They decided to not touch this like read-only default visibility stuff within the clone with RFC, because that way there was a more likely chance that the RFC would fail, right? Because the scope of the RFC is too big. However, the only reason, I'm going to rephrase here, not the only reason. The major reason I and many other people want clone with is so that we don't have to do this like from within the class anymore. It is so that you can just whip up something on the fly, clone an object from whatever scope, and override some of its properties, right? And yeah, we're not gonna add like public set everywhere. That's pretty stupid. Now this protected set stuff, protected, I cannot write protected, but this stuff, it can still change, okay? Like there can be a follow-up RFC to change this, and I hope there will be. Because having to write this is just really annoying. But it means that for now, and we're nearing feature freeze here, I haven't read through the internals mailing list. So if someone knows in chat or in the comments afterwards, if they're already working on this, please let me know. I do hope they are. I'm not gonna write public set everywhere. No, the whole reason for this RFC is to write less, and it's gonna make us write more. So that's really annoying. One of the things you could do is to have with street, right? Or just even our with method here. Instead of doing all of this, we could now do exactly. We could do this clone. Let's see, this and then args basically. So our whole like reflection magic thing got reduced to one line, and I believe this will actually work. Let's see, other address equals address, and I actually like this API a little bit more. Clone with street Baker Street 2, right? Let's see, it's read only. Let's run it again, and now it works because we're making the actual clone from within the object itself, within the private scope, within the or protected scope, and it works. And you can move this to a trait and then use that everywhere. And so the implementation of this with method becomes a bit easier, but you still don't have autocompletion here, which is the thing I need, because like maybe I'm a noob developer here, but I'm not able to remember like dozens of objects with dozens of properties like on top of my head, right? That doesn't work. I'm maybe call me stupid developer, but dumb developer. I need some autocompletion here, and yeah, with this approach it doesn't work. Okay, that brings us to my second problem, the syntax. But I can live with it. I can live with it. If the read-only stuff gets fixed, I will use clone with. It's so unfortunate though that we're stuck with this syntax, with an array of all things, with textual keys even. That's so unfortunate because now, like in textual keys, there isn't any autocompletion by default. I'm sure PHP Storm will add autocompletion here. Of course, that's a given. But still, you have to write the quotes. You have to write the fat arrow. You know, why couldn't it be other address? Let's see. This is what I wanted. Clone equals clone address, and then curly brackets. Street, Baker Street 2, something like this. How nice would that be? Would be pretty similar to get and set hooks now that we have them as well. So I don't know, this is pretty cool, don't you think? No, not gonna happen. The reason they chose arrays, as is listed in the RFC, is because they felt like the feature wasn't important enough to warrant a new syntax. And because there is a breaking change, clone with, I wrote a mistake here. This is what I would do. Or maybe this is cool as well, but this is like syntax that doesn't exist in PHP. There's now a with keyword that's getting reserved, so that's a breaking change. You get these curly brackets that open up a new scope. That's weird. Maybe you could do it like this, but that's a bit weird as well, right? So I don't know, I guess it kind of makes sense that they just used it within clone, but maybe this would have been nice as well then. Street, Baker Street 2, something like this, without having to pass in an array. Actually, now that I've written this, why not this way? Honestly. Oh, it's so much cleaner than having to wrap it in an array. I don't like. They chose the array they write in the RFC because it's the least impactful way to do it. They could fit in this feature like pretty easily. Which, okay, fair point. But I'm not really a fan of it. But I'll deal with it. It's getting it's not changing anymore, I reckon. Maybe there is still a little bit of time left before feature freeze, so maybe people will consider it. By the way, this is in no way me what's the word? Criticizing the RFC authors, because I think they did a really great job. There was already a previous RFC for clone with that failed, because the RFC was too complex, too big. So they really tried to narrow the scope of the RFC so that it would pass, and I think that makes sense, right? But if you then combine the fact that it's a kind of syntax I don't really like, with the fact that it doesn't work for my, and I know many other people, my 95% use case of cloning public read-only properties, then it becomes a bit less exciting for me. But we know that default visibility for public properties can still be changed. So that's nice. Maybe that will happen. Okay, so my final remark here. Maybe the elephant in the room, something that you're already thinking about, is the clone method here. Because how does the clone method work in PHP? The magic clone method. Let's see, object cloning. Let's see. When an object is cloned, just PHP magics methods. Clone, yes, clone. Oh, okay. When an object is cloned, PHP will perform a shallow copy of all the object's properties. A shallow copy means that if there are other objects within the original object, those objects aren't cloned as well. They are just the reference is copied over. Oh, any properties that are references to other variables will remain references. If you want like a true copy of your whole object, you have to recursively go through all the object's properties, right? Once the cloning is complete, if a clone method is defined, then the newly created object's clone method will be called to allow any necessary properties that need to be changed. So in other words, let's comment this out. We have our clone method here, echo hi. And oh well, actually, let's do like this. If we run this, then okay, I'm gonna remove read only for now. Okay, so echo hi. Oh, let's actually. Okay, so we clone the object. The new object is created with new data, and then we end up in the clone method. So if we were to var dump this street at this point, then, oh, huh? No, that I don't understand. Hang on. I thought it was the other way around. Oh yeah. A magic clone method will be called before the new properties are assigned. So when you end up here, the object has been cloned. You're in the clone. Let me actually show that. So var dump SPL object ID this, and then var dump SPL object ID address. Okay, so the first one is 1 and the second one is 2. So this over here is already the cloned object, right? So it's a new object, but the properties that were passed to with this array haven't been set yet. This is good. So you have your original properties, and you can basically still do all the things you need to do in clone as just like before, and only then the new properties are set. I need to stop running. Anyway, so this is the original property still. You could still make changes here, like for example, for deep copies, if you have a reference to like city, for example, you could say like this city equals clone, oh yeah, clone this city, so that you get a deep copy of the original object. Anyway, the problem here is that I would have liked if this array was passed into here. I think that would have made a lot of sense. Also, I don't think, and let's try that out, I don't think this is possible. So this street equals, let's say this array of args exists magically. New street. You will still run into, let's just do clone for now. Oh no, okay, so this works. Even though it's read-only, you can set it. Okay, that's good. That's probably that was probably already in the RFC. Okay, so that's great. So if you would have this now, something like this, yeah, that would be pretty nice. But still, it's not really any different than what I was doing over here with the width, because you don't get auto completion. It's a mess. Okay. Anyway, that's the side note of clone. There's no arguments passed into it, but it's in the future scope, right? Allow clone to inspect the width properties array to skip deep cloning properties that will be overwritten. So yeah, something like this, I guess, is coming, maybe. So yeah, okay. There's clone width. And I have three problems with it, right? Just as in summary. First problem is public set versus protected set for read-only properties. And this is a big one. For me, for my use cases, it makes this feature like totally useless. I'm sorry to say. I wanted this so that I didn't have to make specific with methods on my object or use a trait. Weird syntax? I don't know. This is subjective. I'll get over it, you know? The second and then third one, being able to pass, what was it called? With properties to clone. Not being able to. So yeah, the idea is there, right? And this might be fixed in the future. I don't know when. I really think that this should have been part of the RFC to begin with. Like, yeah, and it's kind of unfortunate. Maybe I should have voiced this concern up front, because a month ago I was sitting down with Tim, who made this RFC, and great work, Tim. Please don't take my skepticism here as a personal insult. I think like it's good. Like I'm happy the RFC made it, but it's not really usable yet for many cases. Yeah, I didn't have time to go through the RFC myself, but probably my feedback wouldn't have mattered anyway, honestly. But yeah, it's really unfortunate. Yeah, the weird syntax, as I say, I'll get over it. It's unfortunate, but if this is what it takes to get internals convinced to accept this, then I'm okay. I'll get over it. And then this one, they're gonna add it in the future, and I think it makes sense that they kept it out of the RFC just to keep it like smaller in scope. Yeah, I am reminded of the was it read-only? The property hooks RFC last year from Larry, and I read through it actually. Property hooks PHP. Like this was that massive RFC, right? And I read through it on stream as well. And my concern here was that it was way too large and like covering way too many edge cases. And then I sat down with Larry, who wrote this RFC, and he said, yeah, but internals really need it to like have this much detail, and you can't really introduce property hooks without like covering all the edge cases. And for property hooks, it turned out pretty well, because like it was really well thought through. You had to spend an afternoon reading through it and understanding all of it. But and I feel like with object with the RFC with with the clone with RFC, they kind of went the opposite way and stripped as much as they could from the RFC. They mentioned this as well somewhere actually. I don't know anymore. This RFC explicitly rejects any backwards compatibility impacting syntax choices like the with keyword. The thing about read-only with, yeah, here. See, with protected set right now, note this is how read-only properties work in PHP currently, and any change would be outside the scope of this RFC. So they really deliberately limited the scope of the RFC, which is, I would say, is a wise thing, but on the other hand, property hooks also got accepted. So, but okay, let's also acknowledge the fact that people are limited on time, and if this is what it is, and that's good as well. It just leads to a feature that I feel isn't like ready for use yet. So yeah, and now I want to go on like on a like kind of philosophical rant maybe, but language design is hard, Stephen is saying here in YouTube chat. And it definitely is, right? It is. I'm not denying that. And there are so many edge cases to take into account. But I think like the main problem for PHP, let me actually get a little closer to you here. Hello. Ooh. Like the main problem for PHP, I feel, is that whatever RFC you make, right, it has to be perfect from the start. There is no room for error because once it's in the language, you cannot make any changes to it anymore. And I feel like this RFC is suffering from that kind of fate as well, because like they tried to trim it down as much as possible so that it had a chance of succeeding, and it did. But then, you know, we're left with a very bare bones RFC that doesn't actually address the issue that it was trying to solve. Well, no, they changed the objective of the feature so that it did solve some issues, and it still does. Like, it's still useful, right, in some cases. But like the main reason we wanted this is read-only properties, cloning read-only public properties with data objects, right? The RFC even starts this way. Let me go back. Both read-only properties and the cloning of objects are commonplace in a lot of PHP applications, but these two concepts don't fully work together in all cases. True! And they still don't really do after this RFC. So, yeah, I don't know. PHP would benefit from a way to introduce experimental features. I'm just gonna I think this is the solution, honestly. Nikita was looking into additions when Nikita was still working on PHP. Additions where you could have like opt-in features basically, and then you could have experimental features, and then you could iterate over those experimental features. But you can like imagine a code base the size of PHP and then having to add flags basically like, oh yeah, this feature is opt-in, and when you use this opt-in feature, suddenly 500 other things change. I know that's so difficult to work with. As some of you might know, I'm working on this framework called Tempest, and we released a 1.0 version. And we were like, but we're not perfect. We're making mistakes. Who are we to say that it's perfect now and that it will work and that we haven't forgotten about anything? Well, let me tell you something. We forgot about a lot of things. But what we did up front is that we tagged 1.0 because people didn't really want to use it before 1.0 because they're like, oh, it's still in development, it's beta. I get that. It's okay. Now people really want to use it. But now only we're discovering like, okay, maybe there are some things that should have been different. And so what we did is we marked a couple of components on Tempest as experimental, and we said like, okay, these things will probably change a little bit. Like, we know we're in the right direction, but we know we don't have it perfect yet. Still, we want to work on this, and we want people to start using it and to discover together with us what should be improved. And marking features as experimental, like we're not gonna like totally change everything from one day to another, but it gives us a little bit of wiggle room to fine-tune the things that the mistakes, the oversights, you know? And that's what PHP is missing. Like, it has to be perfect from the get-go, because now it's getting into PHP 8.5, and then what? It's gonna stay here for not eternity. Maybe until the next major PHP version, which I think PHP 9, I don't think we'll get PHP 8.10 probably. So, I mean, one of the next versions will probably be PHP 8, PHP 9. So, and then they might like introduce some breaking changes. But this like clone width should have been an experimental feature, and it should have changed read-only property, public read-only access to like public set by default instead of protected set. And then people could like start playing around with it. And the people who did, they accept the fact that, okay, things might still change a little bit, and that's fine. And we know that with the next PHP 8.6 or PHP 8.7, maybe there will be some breakage. I'm okay with that. I am okay with that, honestly. But we don't have that. We don't have that in PHP. We're here stuck, and it has to be perfect from the get-go. Or it's not perfect, and we still have to live with it for years to come. So yeah, I don't know. It's almost getting emotional here. It's fine. I'm doing okay. But and yeah, I do want to like highlight once more, like Volker and Tim worked on this RFC, and Tim messaged me asking like, hey, can you review it after it was voted in? I got a message a couple of days ago. Because we also talked a little bit about it during PHP verse, but honestly, I was so tired. I don't remember much of what we talked about then. That I was just tired, right? But yeah, it is what it is, I feel. So yeah, Tim and Volker, like, great work. Don't take this as like a personal insult. I think you worked within like the boundaries, and you came up with a like a compromise. And yeah, that I understand. I do hope that the protected set stuff gets fixed as soon as possible, because then this feature will be usable. It's unfortunate that we don't have experimental features or something like. But anyway, it turned out to be a rant with Brent. I don't know why I feel so like passionate about this. I think like I remember read-only properties being added, and it really revolutionized how I wrote PHP code. And clone width was one of these things that I really struggled with for years now, that it wasn't in the language. So I was kind of excited for it. But yeah, it doesn't work how I had hoped to. But maybe it will change. So I'll be hopeful. Maybe we'll have to wait another couple of years. But yeah. Folks, thanks for being here, and thanks for sharing your input in the chat as well. Sorry that I wasn't like too interactive today. I was in the zone, and I wanted to continue being in the zone basically. This will be like an edited video as well. So in case you're watching on YouTube, I wanted to let you know that don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. You know what to do. And also, if you're watching the live stream, just take a moment to leave a comment as well after the stream. You know, it's always nice. And then we'll see what 8.5 will bring. To be honest, it's already a great release, right? PHP 8.5 is already great, so I'm not complaining. But yeah, I wish it was a bit different. So yeah, folks, that being said, I'll see you in the next one. Okay? Bye-bye.